Lola, how are you this afternoon?
I'm great. Hi, Jada. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So please, why don't you introduce yourself to our guests and we can dive right into this conversation?
Sure. Awesome. Well, my name is Lola Bakare. I am an inclusive marketing strategist, CMO advisor and that's a code for chief marketing officers for those who might not be aware. And author of the book Responsible Marketing, which you see right behind me. Thank you so much for that. Advises on how to create an authentic and inclusive marketing strategy, something that now more than ever is needed advice for everybody running a business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, we're going to dive into the book and also just your expertise. What drew you specifically to not only learn, but encourage other people to utilize responsible marketing?
That's such a great question, Jada. It was really something that organically grew from my experiences working in major Fortune 500 corporations. So I started my career decades ago now, just turned 40, at PepsiCo on the Gatorade brand, which is a really iconic place to learn the basics of marketing. Went on to work with places like Dell, got my MBA at NYU Stern, spent some time at Diageo on the Smirnoff Ice brand. And through this collection of just really amazing experiences at world class brands, I also started to observe what worked and what didn't when it came to connecting with consumers on an emotional level. As an English major as well, someone who's always sort of studied any environment that I'm in, I started to really pay close attention to what other brands were doing and looking at some of the pitfalls that happen when you're not really doing authentic attempts at inclusive and responsible marketing. People can really tell the difference between something that is performative and something that is really impactful. So I wanted to be a voice that can help marketers with a roadmap of advice, how to's, how not to's, so that we can see more success in this field. And ultimately, that leads to more business success.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned, one thing that you came to realize was, what works and what doesn't work in terms of, marketing outreach. So can you share what some of those do's and don'ts are for the
Yes.
businesses that are listening?
It's super key. And literally, each of the things I'm going to mention is a chapter of the book. But in a nutshell, you want to do things that don't just have intent, but have impact. And I break that down into 4 key ways that marketing is actually responsible in that it's inclusive and authentic. And so the first is you can solve a real problem. So think about a brand that is doing something that isn't just talking the talk, but is actually addressing an issue. Then you can create real opportunity. So when you think about programs like what Gap has done, what Banana Republic has done with Harlem Fashion Row, that's actually giving Black entrepreneurs an opportunity to have their clothing featured on a national scale. That's creating real opportunity. That's not just saying we support Black designers. That's actually giving them an opportunity, right? So that's the second one. The third is that you can tell real stories. And this is key. We don't always want to be seen, let's just talk about the Black community in general, as people who are great at dancing and playing basketball. Tell some of our real stories. Really get personal, be authentic, and don't just focus on the tropes that are normally the go-tos. And then fourth, then this is key, especially now, is that you can advocate for real policies. So you look at a brand like Ben and Jerry's, they're actually standing up for what they believe in and saying, we don't believe in police violence. We want to change these laws. We want to actually make a difference. You see a brand like Elf Beauty standing up and saying, we want to change how boardrooms are sort of focus on creating more representation, right? We want to make a more diverse boardroom in every corporation, and they're actually doing the work to make that happen from their own board to impacting other boards. So that's really a great example of actually changing policy. And so when you think about a marketing effort that is not going to be performative, if it does one or more of those 4 things, you're definitely on your way there.
Excellent. I think one of the things you've touched on both in your response and then also just in, the process of setting up this conversation, I learned that one thing that you stand by is that, being culturally fluent is not just a skill, but, it's a core marketing skill, not just a cultural trend. So can you speak a little bit
Absolutely.
to that? What do you mean by that? And how have you seen that
Yeah.
need increase?
I love that question, Jada. And what cultural fluency really starts with humility.
Hmm.
It is understanding that when you are speaking to an audience or engaging, in a conversation that isn't native maybe to your lived experience, you're going to need to learn from them how to do it properly. And you're going to need to understand that that's sometimes going to come with feedback. So cultural fluency starts with listening and understanding that you as a marketer do not have all the answers. Um, so when you think about something like this is one that was talked about a lot over the years, the Kendall Jenner PepsiCo ad that people really found to be more representative of cultural appropriation than PepsiCo probably meant it to be.
Hmm.
Moving on from that was just about apologizing, taking the L, saying we hear you, and learning how to do things better going forward. And that's what they did. So it's not saying that you're always going to get it perfect, but it means that you're willing to sort of listen, learn, and adjust as you get that feedback. And then preemptively, you are talking to communities before you end up engaging with those communities. You're doing things in a way that's community led as opposed to sort of community featuring.
Hmm.
You're doing things that aren't just for the culture, but are of the culture.
Absolutely. And how have you sort of applied that same ideals and mentality within your own business? You are an entrepreneur, a founder of
Yes.
Bico.
Yes. So that's another good question. A lot of what I do is focus on thought leadership. And so one of the ways that I demonstrate humility, I post on LinkedIn. I'm a top voice there. Actually just crossed 40,000 followers today. So that's exciting. Thank you. But if you see the way that I engage, I try to model that spirit of I always have things to learn too.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, this is something that happened last year, I believe it was. I made a post and I used the term kowtow to describe how people at some companies are just bowing down to the whims of the administration, or sort of the rising themes of what you might call right wing politics, wanting to move us away from inclusion. And then somebody of Japanese origin came in my comments and said, I understand what you're trying to say, but you understand the term kowtow is actually really offensive because it was used to describe Japanese people in a disparaging way. And so to me, that was a great learning experience. I said, wow, thank you so much for educating me. There was no need to get upset or be defensive. It was an easy way to show that what we're doing when we're marketing responsibly is we're getting messages out, but we are also taking messages in with a spirit of humility and a willingness to learn. And that's what I think more marketers really need to be doing in order to make it through, these unprecedented times in ways that you're going to come out with your business intact. Not to go on, but I'll give an example of a brand that I have a lot of love for, but I think is struggling with this right now, and that's Target. So, as everyone knows, they came out sort of divesting from their years long, and sort of robust and really groundbreaking innovations in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, even when it comes to their assortment, their mix of vendors. I have close friends who were put on the shelf at Target through their diverse vendor programming. It's something that has made them a lot of money over the years. And then to come out and say that they're no longer focused on those efforts is just something that led to a dramatic decrease in actual measurable foot traffic at those stores.
Absolutely.
So the risk of not engaging in these themes is it's not just a moral one; it's a financial one too. And so we should all be paying attention to that. I do it in my business, and I try to advise others to do it in theirs because it's really about everything, the bottom line, and how we want history to see us.
I love that. I mean, that's honestly is what it comes down to, because essentially your whole reputation in a sense is your brand and how you're promoted and perceived. So I do, with that in mind, I mean, one thing that, as you've noted to me, is not necessarily intertwined with inclusive marketing, but we are seeing this trend increase, is snark marketing.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about what exactly that looks like, and what is that fine line between edgy commentary and saying something that might be offensive?
And it's a really great question. And right now, I think a lot of it has to do with the rise in social media. So you see a lot of this taking place on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it today, where a brand will kind of jump in a conversation that's happening in order to, and this is how I would define what snark marketing is, in order to relate to their consumers in a way that feels more like a friend than a corporation. They'll sort of say something edgy to get into that conversation. A notable one of recent um, uh, um, just sort of occurrences is where we saw Wendy's jump into the conversation about Katy Perry's Blue Origin trip, and they said something along the lines of paraphrasing, we wish she would have stayed up there, or something like that. People had a lot of laughs about it. I'm on the fence as to whether that was responsible as far as championing, the idea of women having opportunities like getting into space, whether or not you loved the commentary she had about it or thought she was maybe a little bit too flamboyant with it. Did Wendy's really need to be in that conversation? Debatable. Another brand that does a lot of what I would call snark marketing is Duolingo. That it's really key to their approach to branding. They have their avatar that does different things that you wouldn't really expect from a major brand like that, but it keeps people engaged. So I think the fine line is really, if you have a reason to be part of the conversation and you understand that the reward might be bigger than the risk, it's okay for brands to experiment in that space. But if you're really just trying to jump on every single bandwagon, I think that's where a lot of brands kind of cross the line.
Absolutely understood. And my last question, I mean, the question of the hour, is one thing everyone has to start looking at is from a future lens. What are we going to start seeing happening with different businesses in the future? And just you specifically in your expertise, what sort of do you think, well, number one, that we will see more inclusive marketing tactics in this political climate? And how do you want to see the future of inclusive marketing or responsible
Yeah.
marketing be shaped?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I'm going to say that what I want to see is what I'm actually predicting and what we're starting to see many more examples of now. And that is something I call brand bravery. It's it 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 actually encompasses more than just marketing, but think of it as how a brand shows up, how it lives its values. And we're going to see more people. And when I say people, I mean brands in this case, more companies, more representatives of companies have a voice that dissents from what the sort of authoritarian bend we're seeing come from Washington might assert right now. Harvard University is a great example. Flat out disagreed with the demands that were coming from Washington. And that only serves to take Harvard's brand equity up a notch. They had more applicants this year than ever before. So I'd sum that up by saying when other people are zigging, the smart people zag. And we're going to see more brands take the benefit of zagging. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. And in fact, you get a lot more benefit when you don't. So, if you want to play it safe, that's really not playing it smart.
I love that. I love that, Lola. Thank you so much. Do you have any takeaway from this conversation, that not only this conversation, but when readers read your book, of course, we want to promote your book as well. What do you want people to take away from it?
Yeah, I want everybody from those in corporate marketing seats. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from people who do this every day, to even those who are just starting a side hustle or running their own small business, to understand that this book is for you. It takes you through really practical examples. That's the feedback I always get, of how to apply the principles of responsible marketing to grow your business in a way that gives you more impact and output financially than you would otherwise have. So it's really about doing really well while doing things that are good. And what better way to sleep at night knowing that our bank accounts are full and our hearts are full as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lola. It's been a pleasure to have you. You've provided some very excellent pointers. I'm not an entrepreneur myself, but these are things that I would definitely be thinking about if I was getting into, brand creating or business marketing. So
Well, you are a creator. Here you are creating. So I think it applies to you too.
Oh, see, fine point. Thank you so
There
much.
you go.
Well,
All right. Thanks, Jada. Appreciate you.